Well, guess what? Our podcast has survived to a fourth month. It's December, and we are here to talk about making a band movies, which is our typical, completely ridiculous and nonsensical topic of choice. But I am not here by myself because my co-host did not actually ditch me after 3 months. So Zach Ford is here and ready for month four. How you doing, Zach?
I'm doing good. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I'm like, maybe I should just like ask Paul if he could just like pretend he's me for an episode. So I mean, I'm putting it out that ditching will not happen in the future. But of course, I'm here to talk about commitments because this movie fucking rules. I love this movie, and every time I watch it, I'm like, why do I not watch this every day?
I'm not gonna lie. Zach has never pushed harder for any movie in the history of the podcast than Commitments. He was
And
like, the topic comes up, and Zach's like, "We're doing Commitments. If we're not doing Commitments, I quit."
I just because we brought up like eight things. I was like, okay, I'm flexible anything, but commitments is a lock. And so let's see what else we want to need. Maybe we don't want to do all Irish band movies, which I easily could have made this be. Um, but definitely that was one I was not willing to negotiate. And it worked
Oh,
out.
it absolutely did. But before we get to a discussion of Commitments, let us do the last movie we watched on Letterboxd. Zach Ford, hit me.
So continuing 1980, what year we're doing? Five?
I think so.
1985, 1985 I watched Police Story, recommended to me by friend of the pod, Paul Oyama. Police Story, what made Jackie Chan, really famous, not just in Hong Kong, but also crossing over to the U.S. Really, what brought him here. Man, I like guess I didn't really know too much about the movie because I was I was caught unexpected on that it's like straight up a comedy. I thought it was just an action movie and a cop story, which that name Police Story was used later in the 2000s just as pure action movies with Jackie Chan. But back then it is like full farce and goofy comedy. Like jokes, some of the jokes and set pieces are almost like from Airplane in a way. But I feel like a very um, you know Chinese or Hong Kong humor. It is definitely a different sense of humor that I had to, vibe with, but it fully works with me. No one can do, slapstick set pieces, as well as Jackie Chan. There's just like moments of him with like phone lines and him like navigating, through the phone lines like a jungle, and he's just a very dynamic physical actor that works. But even the action scenes are like full chaotic, joy. The opening scene of them chasing the criminals through a busy village, and then like he's like being dragged on a bus and being chased on a bus, and the cars are just like crashing through all of these houses, and it's there's so much happening, and it's but also pleasurable and inventive. It's a really great movie and unexpected for me because I'm not a huge action fan, so it's a nice surprise.
Yeah, this is one of these movies that we were talking about this concept the other day about movies you have seen but don't remember that much from. Like to the point where if somebody asked you, "Have you seen this movie?" you have to like go look at your records to make sure you have like proof that you have seen it.
I like that
Police
we
Story is
say go look at your records like this is a normal thing that people do, that they keep databases of everything they've seen for the past 10 years and who they've seen it with.
well, we're psychos. I feel like you already known that. You can go look at our letterbox links. We look like psychos if you look there.
Okay,
Um,
that's only the start of mine.
yes, Zach Ford has gone full psycho. He has like fucking Google Drives full of movies.
Multiple tabs. It
It's
takes me
crazy.
like an hour and a half to log any movie I've seen to put through all my forms.
Yeah, but Police Story is unfortunately one of those movies that I don't remember that much about, but have seen. Probably should rewatch it at some point. The last movie I rewatched was I've been rewatching a lot of 2000s comedies, and most of them have been of the raunchy variety. And I took a slight detour to rewatch a 2000s comedy that's not raunchy, and that is 500 Days of Summer. Um, this movie is, I think the first time I watched this movie was like, man, this is a really great romantic comedy. And the second time I watched this movie, I really hated Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Like, had a it's a weird movie in that I like scenes in it. scenes in like a vacuum. I think I find some of the scenes in the movie enjoyable to the point where like I do kind of enjoy the movie, but I also find the relationship just toxic and kind of awful. Like my major reading of the film is that Joseph Gordon-Levitt is in love with the idealized version of Summer that he wants her to be. That he's not actually in love with the real person because the real person keeps telling him, "I don't want to be in a relationship," and he keeps telling her, "But you should be in a relationship with me." And I think in the year that we were doing that, the year when the movie came out, people kind of looked at that and goes, "Oh, he's a romantic." And now we look back at it and go, "You're like a manipulative, like creepy, bad person. Like what is wrong with you?" And like
Entitled sad boy.
yeah,
That's name.
you get to the end of the movie and the final scene with Minka Kelly happens, and you're like, and I think when you're supposed to you're watching, you're supposed to feel, oh look, he's found a new girl. And my read of that scene is, oh, he's just going to make the same exact mistakes again because he's learned nothing through the entire run of this film.
It is the sensitive guy misogyny that
Mm.
got excused for too long. It's like, oh, they're such a nice guy. Why don't other girls like the nice guys? Because they also feel they're so entitled to all the girls' attentions because they do the right thing or treat women nice.
Right.
But it's that entitlement and that idolization of females that is, unfair. It doesn't treat them like a whole person. Yeah, so this movie, I think when you see it as, a 19-year-old, 18-year-old, which I did, really just not mature enough to
I was a
perceive it
teenager.
in the
Yeah.
way it was. Yeah, definitely. And that's why I think, it still has a lot of love because people, see it from those eyes or remember it from those eyes. But once you, get more experienced in relationships and in this world and just mature and, learn how to respect people of different
Yeah.
genders, it definitely comes off a different light. I do, especially after you were watching and talking about it, I was wondering about the intention versus the perception. Like, I think that there might be some intentionality and that he is kind of supposed to be an ass, and this is telling the story of someone who idolizes women and he had to get past it. I do think the last scene undercuts that because then he
Yeah.
just gets rewarded with another
Yeah.
girlfriend. He keeps redoing the cycle. So maybe I'm giving it too much credit for the intentionality, but it doesn't matter because the way it comes off, the execution, the way it's perceived is the opposite.
Yeah. It really is kind of the ultimate in this really stupid idea guys seem to have that if you love someone enough and are nice enough to somebody, then they will suddenly change who they are and just be with you. Like he spends this entire movie thinking, if I just do the right things, then Summer will change who she fundamentally is and want to be my girlfriend. Even though the entire movie, Summer just keeps telling him, no, I don't want to be your girlfriend. We're just friends. This is just a casual thing. And she keeps telling him that over and over and over again. And he just never listens.
And when she, follows through with what she says and doesn't want to be with him, that's when he goes, that bitch. They turn completely and, say derogatory, names
Yeah.
for women, act like they're this villain and this evil person for basically, living their truth.
Yeah. And I think the most honest statement said in the entire film is said by his younger sister, who, when he's acting like a sad sack after the girl who told him she didn't want to be with him, told him she didn't want to be with him, his little sister played by Chloe Grace goes, don't be a pussy. And that really is what he should have listened to his little sister and stopped being a pussy because the girl didn't want to be with him. Stop moping over women who don't want to be with you.
I just lost my running ring inside of a stuffed Dalmatian. So I'm going to search for it as a hole in its neck. And I don't know why I put it down, but I did.
This is a random end to a discussion about 500 Days of Summer. But Zack Ford, let us continue on to The Commitments, which is a much better movie than 500 Days of Summer. Zack just dropped things.
I found
Nice
it.
joke. Nice joke. We all heard the clank. And before we dig into The Commitments, which, let's be clear, much better movie. I'm going to say this again. Much better movie than 500 Days of Summer.
Yeah.
Zack Ford, you love this movie. You pushed super hard for it on the podcast. You texted me while you were watching it, telling me how much you loved rewatching
10 minutes into the movie, I was like, this rules. Everyone should watch this.
Zack Ford, give me the plot summary of the commitment.
We're gonna keep this all very tight and short. So, there's Jimmy. He wants to be a music manager. He doesn't play any music. He just has a passion for it and wants to sell it to Ireland, bring it to Ireland. He finds some buddy musicians. He says, you know what, you should be playing not this like wedding band music you're in, but you should be playing soul. Ireland needs soul. And so he holds some auditions, and you get to see every musical variety of people through Ireland coming to audition. It's one of the best scenes of the movie. And he forms kind of a ragtag squad of people he knew from childhood, some girls he knew drunk they met at the wedding to sing the kind of like, and they play him up like this legendary trumpeter that played with all the soul legends. May or may not have. They never closed out Luke. May or may not have been this legendary trumpet player that's a lot older. So it's a really ragtag squad that he teaches, to feel the soul, to love soul, and to come together as a band and create this music. They never make it big. They play at some pubs, some bars. They play at a youth center for a heroin charity. Another great joke. They misspell heroin without the E or with an E.
Well, they don't technically misspell it. They just give you the wrong heroin.
They give you the wrong heroin. So kind of whatever they can get is the jobs they get. So there's some band changes. They have a great drummer that headbutts people. There's lots of blood throughout this movie. And it turns out band drama breaks out. All the girls were fucking the old trumpeter. The lead singer is a dickhole that shouts weird things and hits on the girls, and no one likes him. And then he gets in a fight with both of the drummers. Like, just if you're a drummer, you're gonna hate the lead singer in this movie. And so it all kind of falls apart. They talk about where they became later, but the lesson is that he was able to make something special for a little bit, and even if it didn't last, the ability to create something special was worth it all.
Absolutely.
That's the best I've ever fucking done, because I kept it. I didn't go too much into details.
That was a great plot summary.
Thank you.
I do want to start this discussion with something you mentioned, which is the audition scene for the band is amazing. Yeah. It's this really brilliant stuff. It's such a good style of Jimmy keeps just opening his door and asking people what their musical influence are. And it's just this hilarious moment of he just opens the door and somebody says it and he shuts it. Somebody says something, shuts it. And then sometimes it's even just the look of the person and he shuts it. There's also a guy who sees everyone going to his door and thinks he's selling drugs.
Yeah, just great. He's like, I saw a long line, so I assume there's drugs.
It's just a great scene. It is such a good way of going through the process of putting people in your band. Like, you already have a couple people in your band because you had the people you met at the wedding and the girl from the chip shop. But it's just a way of, like, you really get a really quick insight into what Jimmy likes, like what kind of band Jimmy wants, what kind of singers, what kind of influence Jimmy wants the band to have, in this really quick montage of like people, basically explaining their influences.
Yeah, it really cements Jimmy's characterization, which is he is a focused person. If anyone in the band, he's focused, he knows what he wants, and not like even necessarily like doesn't like this. And I think what's important about this scene is a lot of the musicians we see are pretty good. Like that bagpipe player. Like,
he's quite good.
That guy. There's like a lot of them really good, and he dismisses them pretty quickly. I don't think because they're bad, but he's like, that's not what I'm looking for. It's not what I want. So he can see someone, he goes like, yeah, that's like, not trying to be like judgmental or rude, but he can tell right away doesn't fit this very narrow focus that he is going for. He has a plan, and everything has to go tightly into that plan. And that's kind of how he carries his way through that movie. Is everything has to fit into his goals. He keeps everything really tight.
He's a very specific person. Like, I think and that's cemented by the idea that he wants to do a 1960s African-American soul band in Dublin, but not bringing in people who you would traditionally see in a soul band. He wants to do a soul band with like a bunch of Irish people. And like I think that's something that's like he's just very specific throughout the film. Like, he wants this type of music. He wants these specific influences
Yeah.
for these specific reasons. He wants people to wear these specific outfits because this is what you're supposed to wear in a soul band. You play these type of songs, you play it in this order, you act in a certain way, you show up on time. Like he's a very, very specific person. And weirdly, of all the people in the band, for the person who does the most, he has the least ego. He has almost no ego. Like that's kind
Yeah.
of one of the reasons that he is very successful. Is unlike a lot of members of the band, where they get slight. I mean, like let's be clear for a second. People like the Commitments, but they're getting
Yeah.
cheered by a crowd of 40 people. This is not
Of like kids and 50-year-old
and drunk
women.
people. Yeah,
Drunk people.
this is not a lot of support. And some people in this band get some insane egos off of very little actual accomplishment, while Jimmy is out there kind of is the mastermind of it all and really deserves the most credit, but in some ways is the least ego has the least ego about it, which is kind of the reason he succeeds.
Because I think the general theme of the movie is that what drive and focus can accomplish. So like he's
Mhm.
a dreamer, and as a dreamer, if you follow the right plan, if you stay focused on it, if you don't want to start fucking all the side singers like everyone else in the band wants to, if you don't want to get obsessed with your role in the band and feel like you need to be the leader of the band, he didn't have that. If you can stay focused on what your end goal is, right? You can achieve no matter how temporary it is. Okay, even and no matter how unexpected it is, because it is that because they are Irish and drunks and outcasts in some way. A lot of the band members,
Mhm.
this is not expected for them to achieve anything, but because of his driving focus, they were able to accomplish temporary, you know, quality.
I think to me it was like when I was watching it, I think really the difference between ego and then being a person who's focused on ego or a person who's focused on dreams. Like Jimmy is really focused on he has this dream for what he wants this to be. And for him, nothing get he doesn't want to feel accomplished until he reaches the point at which he thinks is where they need to be. Like he wants to make sure they get this audience and this level and this recognition before he starts feeling like he's accomplished something. Well, and that's one of the reasons why he's so successful. While so many other members of the band are so short-sighted, they're like, wow, two girls winked at me and three people applauded, and suddenly like I'm going to have this raging out of control ego that just destroys the band from the inside. And that is in some ways the reason this band breaks up, is that people's egos just start clashing. In the beginning, they're all really focused. They're all in line with Jimmy. They're all like, yeah, let's do soul. We're going to work hard. We're going to show up on time to rehearsal. We're going to wear the right we're going to wear the clothes. We're going to listen to the right music, have the right focus. And then over time, they take the smallest amount of success and let it completely destroy them.
And there's different like kinds of success these people are like destroyed. Like the lead singer is really like fame and popularity is what he goes for. And then like one of the subplots, very minimal subplot that I kind of find it funny and forgot is that the
Mm-hmm.
saxophonist, his is really like a creative thing that takes him over a little bit of a creative ego is that he starts like playing jazz in the middle of their soul songs, and he just wants he's trying to be this kind of over the top saxophonist to show off his skill. It wasn't
He
about
wants to
fame,
be
but
a
he's like, I'm going to be the best musician in this group,
mm.
and so that kind of takes over. And the girls not really as much fame or that, just like sax takes them over.
It's just a lot of infight. I mean,
Like,
but it is sort of ego in that it's infighting. Is that they each? I think that the
yeah,
ego of thinking that they've gotten the attention of this older, accomplished guy, and then that ego gets shattered when they start to realize, like as the movie goes, like especially like in the beginning, I think they each think they're special, and then there is a point at the end of the movie where it all kind of falls apart. I think he probably was telling each of them that they were the special one. And then there is kind of a point at the end of the movie where it's like,
yeah.
oh crap, he's kind of gone through all of us. And in kind of the classic fashion of relationships, when a guy screws over a bunch of girls, the girls don't get mad at him, they get mad at each other in the same way that
Yeah.
guys do
It's
to each other if one girl
1990.
screws over. What?
It is from 1990, so that is a little bit of a dated aspect of how
I
they
think it's
treat it.
I think it's still relatively true today. I think if a bunch of guys all get screwed over the same girl, they might be more likely to fight with each other than they would be to fight with her in the same way that these girls end up doing.
Yeah, but I think there's maybe I'm reading into this too much or adding in my own ideas, but
Okay.
I feel like when the girls are singing, and then they all kind of get their chance. Well, one of them doesn't really, but two of the girls get their chance to lead vocals or have
Mhm.
standout backup scenes, and they always show the other singers kind of give looks at them while they're singing, and there's like a stage smile and happiness like they're in the music. But I feel like there's a little bit of a gleam that's like, you're not better than me. Why are you the one like getting the solo or the spot? Um,
Mm.
that kind of jealousy of when they get a little more focus of the song or attention. Even though there's clearly a best singer, and it's the brunette from Orphan Black.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of hot takes. One of the takes I have in this movie, and I will just throw this out there now. I think the band is better when the
Yeah, that's
females are
not a
on
good
lead
take.
vocals.
That's a bad take.
I don't like the lead vocal guy that much. I think
Okay.
he's kind of a. I also think the band functions better just when he's not there because I think he's too much of a spotlight stealer. And I think in some ways,
Okay, so that's
Natalie.
that's taking him as a performance, but if you're just listening to it as a general sound, I think what he brings to that band, that style of soul, which is very specific, is just to me, more entertaining and also a little more unique than what the
No,
girls
that's
can
fair.
offer. Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. That's just my like weird hot take I had while watching this that I'm not 100% even like behind, but I thought why not bring it up. But yeah, it is interesting how the entire this is I feel like a lot of times in movies like this, band forming movies, you watch the band form, and the reason that the band breaks up is not because the band has infighting, it's because the band like reaches a next level and people can then go off and do something else. This interestingly enough ends on a sort of a sour note, but also kind of a it's a really interesting note. At the end of the film, they believe that a certain other famous musician is going to come perform with them,
Wilson
and
Pickett.
right, and he doesn't show. So they start fighting. There becomes infighting, and Jimmy is just like, "You guys are morons. You fight about everything. I'm leaving," and he just leaves. And as he's walking away, he walks past a car which happens to contain the
See,
same.
that's where it contains Wilson Pickett. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is you were look like you're completely on that. What's his face, the trumpeter, was not actually truthful about his past life as far as being a trumpeter for all these different soul musicians. But this is where, even though it keeps hitting the line, he's like, he was true. She came. So he did have connections to Wilson Pickett, even though they once again contradict at the end, saying the people he was saying he was torn with has been dead for 10 years. So it kind of goes back and forth on that, but he was true. He was coming.
I think he is an exaggerator. I think he
Yes.
definitely exaggerates his relationships with these certain people. I think he is on some levels a bullshitter. Like I think
Oh, he's a real tool. And it's one of those tools that many people would not realize is a tool, but I'm on to you. I know who you are as a manipulator and a bullshitter. You are good at leading any conversation to bring the attention to you
mhm.
and to focus everything great. Even it's not just like women, which he does with those three ladies, but also like his Jimmy's dad. They talked about Elvis stories. He just
Oh
pulls
yeah.
out whatever anybody wants to hear. He's able to deliver
Mhm.
it. And it's just that kind of asshole.
Yeah, and he totally sells it too. Like he convinces the dad of stuff the dad wants to believe, but that is also illogical to believe, and just completely succeeds at doing it.
Joey the
Um,
Lip is the name, by the way. He need to
Joy
come
the
up with
Lip,
a name.
correct. So at the end of the movie, um, that happens, and that's kind of the end. Is kind of it's a very interesting ending because it ends on a sour note that the band just breaks up and ends. But
They
then if you
never
look,
really amount to anything. Like they have one like decent bar show where someone's supposed to show up, but they didn't get a record deal. They didn't get like a huge audience. They just like put on shows that people who happened to be there were entertained by, and that was the top of their success. They kind of came together as far as making quality music, and I think that's what you see as a
yeah,
success. They come from nothing to playing well together, no matter how much you're fighting.
yeah, they basically got a review in the Dublin Times is kind of the height of their success. So it's interesting at the end that they end on this breakup, but also then Jimmy has this whole kind of monologue after it, talking about where everybody went and how he's seen them, and he seems to be outside of the lead vocalist, basically sort of friendly with everyone. Like there's a weird thing where like he runs into some of the people on the street, just playing outside a shop. He doesn't seem to have animosity towards them or frustration. There doesn't seem to be an anger there. So it's like this interesting. They kind of just all accepted that the band, what happened and kind of moved on. He
I
doesn't
mean,
say
he was the connecting piece. The first, he was the one that had some kind of relationship or friendship with everybody that was able to bring them together. So he's just that kind of. He's like very similar to the Lips, except without the bullshit. Like he's
Mhm.
someone that can be on everyone's level, any kind of person around him, by just being really true to himself and what he wants, and everyone just kind of admires that. So no one held any animosity towards him afterwards because
Mhm.
he, you know, wasn't part of the drama. He was always straightforward with anyone. There was nothing, that got on people's nerves.
Yeah, he was
He's
just
just
he was just he was a, he was just a driven guy who happened to be a natural born leader. And as he talks about during his final discussion of what happens, he does end up with what you described as the best singer,
yeah.
which is
Natalie.
which is actually kind of a cute romance. They have a couple interactions throughout the film. And one of the interesting things about him is he specifically will not sleep with anyone in the band, even though at multiple times throughout the film, basically all three girls want to sleep with him. But he has this really interesting sense of morality where he is
Mhm.
very much like, I am the manager, I cannot sleep with the talent because that would cause anarchy and chaos in my band that doesn't have a career and plays in an occasional pub.
Because this was also introduced while sex was causing chaos
Yeah.
in the band. Bad timing on Natalie's sake to make a move. Going after him after all the other girls are fighting about
Yeah.
Joey the Lips and going, would you go on a cab ride with me if you weren't the manager? He's like, what the fuck? I just said this. The actor's like, I just said it creates chaos. What are you doing? Um,
But
good
it is
stuff.
also this weird thing where like Jimmy is just on a whole different maturity level from the rest of these people. Like they're all the same age, and Jimmy like mentally seems like he's like a good 10 years older. Like he's out there and be like, no, we go out and we follow the way, we follow the path, and then we rehearse like this. Like he has this sense of he has a sense of maturity and the sense of like diligence that is like really important to his success and something that a lot of the other characters just don't have. They're just like, oh, we're in a band and it's kind of
Yeah.
happening, and like he's very serious about this. He like treats it like a job, and they're all kind of treating it like something they just kind of do.
Well, that's why I think him in that role it works because at first, and I think about this for like 2 minutes every time I watch the movie. Is like, why are we following the manager of the band? Why is he the character that matters and not the musicians? But he is the one with ambition, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
matters. He's the one with a goal to make something special on music. He just knows he's not the right person for it. But as you said, no one else really has any grand ambitions. They kind of just long for the ride. The one woman's just like, I have to take care of like my mom's 8 kids. And this is like, I just need this for fun in my life and something to
Yeah.
do. And that's kind of it, what most people are. It's just like an escape. I think that does touch on what I think is an underplayed political aspect of it. I think they could have hit a little more, which is, they talk about Ireland as a third world country at the
Mm-hmm.
time, and these are all blue collar people. Blue collar Ireland is like my ideal movie setting. That truly is like my favorite movie subgenre. Is like UK Ireland working class movies. Is right up my zone, but they aren't living the happiest of life. They have to work hard. Some people have had prison time for fights. And, the one girl has 8 kids because these Irish Catholics just bust out all the babies, and they're all
Wow.
lower class um, families, that people that never really had the opportunity to dream for anything more, and this is their one chance to make something unexpected of what people expect from that community, from that poor Dublin area. And this does connect to why I think Jimmy wanted to do soul music. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where I said the political resonance is there, and they connect it very
Mm-hmm.
slightly. Which is soul music was picked because he sees some solidarity and the black struggle in America to the Irish struggle, which can sound problematic, but we also do have to view this from a European state of mind because we're just seeing them as like white people. But Ireland, I mean, though they're not Northern Ireland, but still a lot of islands had a lot of their struggles, had their own issues. So being
Mm-hmm.
able to see something in the pain and movement of black musicians and connect that to their own experiences, and bring that to the communities, was one of those deeper goals of Jimmy. It was not just be successful, but bring something that he thought could be special and important and um, enlightening, I think, for that community, to bring people together to live through this, kind of dramatic in a way moving music.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
it's very emotional music. Like soul is very it's very filled with emotion. It's filled with pain. It's filled with like a lot of very powerful emotions. And I think you're right. Yeah, because like Jimmy, if he wanted to make money, soul in Dublin doesn't seem like the smart move. Like there's clearly, there's levels to the way he's thinking about using this type of music. Like he didn't pick the popular stuff. He didn't pick what was, trendy at that time. But yeah,
mhm.
I think the movie does a really good job showing like the struggle of Ireland at that time. And these people, like, they have it's sometimes just offhanded in conversations, but you're right, they do talk about like, oh, I'm on probation. Oh, this is on prison. Oh, like
They're like in welfare line at one point, just
they're
having a
on the
normal.
dole. They're all on the dole. Jimmy's been on the
Yeah,
dole for like 2 years. Some countries in Europe have like a social welfare program that is sort of like unemployment, but it exists. Like in the U.S., obviously you can't get unemployment for 2 years. Like they
yeah,
don't offer it for that long, but the other countries in Europe do. And just like this idea of like so many people, their job is literally to collect this welfare because there just isn't anything out there. Even the way that they do the movie, like how do they get around? They get around in a van that's supposed to sell food that's kind of locked up in a crappy shed. Where do they get all their instruments and their equipment from? Like somebody's random like warehouse that looks like it's not
it's like
selling anything. Like it's
low key drug dealer gang.
yeah, basically. But like the entire movie, where do they play? They play in these like crappy town halls and these like churches and pubs. Like there's nothing flashy or impressive. And
Where do they practice? They show up all like when do they have time or where are they? They're like in the meat warehouse that he has to work. He's playing guitar amongst the dead pigs, or
yeah,
like the woman practicing with all the kids. They're all playing within their workplaces the best they can because that blue collar work lifestyle takes up their whole life and all their focus.
I mean, Jimmy, even at the beginning of the movie, tells them like, no, this is supposed to be blue collar music for by blue collar people for blue collar people. You know, to express the existence that they know and understand. And like that's in some ways one of his biggest things is like he wants to use soul as a way to connect to the people around them in Dublin, the people who are in the same situation they are. Like Jimmy is a really profoundly fascinating character that is like,
Yeah,
and
great performance. It
Robert
definitely a lot.
Arkins is fantastic in this movie. And this brings us to another really important thing to this movie. This movie is filled with non-actors.
Yeah. Though some of them are actors, but were also musicians on the side. Like a lot of the backup singers were also they have had successful acting careers.
That's fair.
As well.
There are a couple people in this movie that if you watch the right things, like specifically UK television or UK movies,
Yeah.
you will
Have,
recognize. Cole Meany is Robert Arkin's dad. The girl Natalie is played by Maria Doyle Kennedy, who was on you said Orphan Black.
yeah.
She also plays Mr. Bates's previous wife in Downton Abbey. She's the mom in Sing Street. But these
Good
are,
actor.
yeah,
But
she's
also
very,
but also had a very successful music career
yeah.
aside from.
Robert Arkins literally does this movie like a music video based on a song from one of these movies, a TV show, and then a movie that supposedly came out in Ireland in 2018, but doesn't have a runtime on IMDb. And this guy is, and I'm not joking, legitimately incredible in this movie. And it's kind of a shame that he did not act more because he is so good.
Because he's a musician. And since the movie's filled with musicians, including the one role that isn't a musician in the movie,
I know.
because he is like he's composed a few things, and I think he makes albums stuff. But I think his primary career has always been
Yeah.
music since
Yeah.
then. So he's never maybe he was interested in movies or acting, but it is an incredible performance. I think one thing that sticks out because it could not work in the wrong actor's hands is that there's some voiceovers that connect to him like faking an interview, and it's just him like living his
Wonderful.
own dream life, and it still just comes off very charming and sincere and not quirky like it could as much. But
He does these he does these interviews where he's like basically like what would happen if he was interviewed on like an Ed Sullivan show or something, like some big show where he's talking about, oh, what happened to your band? And he does this throughout the movie when he talks about like, oh, what was it like what was it like trying to find people for the movie? What was it like, with that gig? What would happen if this person didn't show up? When did you make your break? He's so good in these scenes. Like these little interview things, they really let you inside like his head and like his thought process and like how much he dreams of like being something more. And yeah, he's so good in this film.
And think another thing that I didn't remember. This I think is the third or fourth time I've seen this movie, but it's just like how funny it is, and he delivers a
Oh,
lot of these like comedy lines and moments so well. We've already kind of talked about some of our favorite jokes. My current screen name is Elevator Horse because it's like a joke that has nothing to do with
oh,
anything
it's so
happening
good.
in the movie or the plot. They just have like real comedy jokes. Like these are like just there for the punchlines. So it is a comedy as much as it is a music movie. Um, but because there's a moment he's just going to see people and he's waiting for the elevator. There's just like this 10-year-old with a horse, and he's like, can that horse come up here? He's like, yeah, he can't take the stairs. It's too hard on his feet. It's just off line, and there's like a line about like Tina Turner being a grandma that's really great, and all these kind of just side jokes.
Yeah.
It's a really funny movie, and I think I forget the actor's name already. 2 minutes into talking about, but Jimmy I think is a great straight man a lot of way
Mhm.
to have all these kind of wacky, goofy characters and lines happening around him for him to just react and um, yeah,
Yeah.
as the world goes is goofy around him. Um,
The band has a great for comedy aspect. The band has really great interactions where they take shots at each other. They're kind of
yeah.
snarky. The
And
stupid
the
lead singer.
characters are kind of broad in a comedic way, which is
Yeah.
okay because Jimmy takes all the more dramatic and thematic depth that the other characters can be broad there for a reason.
Will take themselves a little bit too seriously. They think they're
Yeah,
all a little bit too important. The lead singer is always hitting on girls and then just getting rejected with like the chair to the back of the head. And there is a great joke that I wanted to make sure we touch on, which is when Jimmy is talking about the original like influences for the band. He tells everyone to repeat the James Brown phrase, "I'm black and I'm proud." And there's a hysterical moment in the film where one of the white, I believe he is a redhead characters says this line, "I'm black and I'm proud," to a small child who looks at him like he's fucking insane.
he's not the redhead. He is the brunette
Okay,
saxophonist.
my apologies.
That he was the one embracing it.
The child still looks at him like he's insane. Like, what on earth
Yes,
did you just
which
say?
is the look the band gave too. He was the only one that like I get it, I feel it, but the other band was like, "What?" Like they're kind of like how we would view it today. Like I don't know if this is appropriate. You like comparing our lives to the struggles of Black people. It's kind of how the band reacted. That's how they kind of get away with it. It's almost in a way excusing themselves for appropriating soul music by
Yeah.
showing that the band members are also like unsure if this is okay.
Well, it's like
Um,
the early parts of the movie being like, do we have to play this? Can we just play the stuff we want to play, the stuff that we think is popular?
they want to play like 80s new wave music is what they're like
Right.
used to, which is yeah, like madness and um I'm blanking on the character's name. I'm trying to look it up.
Wait, what?
But I'm amazed we haven't talked about him and that he's not your favorite character in the movie. But
Oh, the enforcer drummer?
the replacement drummer.
Okay, let me talk about this for a second. This guy is the
Okay,
most
Micah,
Micah.
right? Right,
Doesn't
there
matter his name. He's just the toughie. He is the best. Um, his go-to move in a fight is not a
we go.
punch, is not a kick. It is a headbutt,
A
which
really
is
bloody
awesome.
headbutt.
Literally, he walks up to somebody and gets in their face and goes whack, and then the guy typically breaks their nose or leaves them like cut up on their face. He is awesome. There is a part of the movie where he jumps off stage while the band is performing to go fight three guys at once, wins, saves the money for Jimmy, gives it back to Jimmy, gets back up on stage with blood all over his face, and starts playing again. This guy
Yeah, he's a
is
good
the best.
guy though. He's just like standing up for the group. He has his morals. He's gonna stand up for his morals by headbutting people. He is just that
He's
kind
a
of
bulldog.
stereotypical like Irish
He's a bulldog. He's
dog.
the guy
Yeah, Irish bulldog, not that intelligent and just like a rabid
who will
animal.
fight anyone who messes with his group.
Because he's brought in about halfway through the movie as their bouncer at the community
Mm-hmm.
center, the church community center. They thought they needed a bouncer, and he's just like giving everybody a fucking hard time. He's like, all those kids like, don't do shit, don't do shit. I'm watching you, and just all these like 12-year-olds that might be like the local tomfoolery kids, just like all over them. He's real funny, but he gets promoted to a drummer because the original drummer. Um, Fought too much with the lead singer. Now this is a part that I think is kind of an asshole move. This movie is real rude to drumming. They literally say as the drummer leaves the original one, he's like, I hope you find someone else. And Jamie's mad. He's like, anybody can drum. And what turns out, literally anybody can drum in this movie. They have the lead singer coming up and drumming and saying, yeah, anybody can do this. And they have this like dumbass thug coming out and he learns how to drum within 5 minutes. And then like most of the movie, like I think handles the music pretty seriously. Like it took them a while to vibe together and really get the art of making soul music. Except like drumming, you get it right away. Don't worry, you just hit the drum and you're good.
There's actually like a really important part of the movie is that this band doesn't really click into like their second or third gig.
Yeah.
Like
well,
you can
part of
see
that was nerves too. They play off the nerves in the first one, which is.
But that's good because that's realistic with what would happen if you were actually a band. You get to like there is this sense of realism with them because they're actually musicians and they understand like the difference between playing the first time with people you're not really knowing them and then playing the second time and the third time and kind of just like getting more and more familiar and more comfortable. It's just a really good movie for the band and just for the music as a whole. Like this soundtrack is awesome. I need to go find it. I need to go listen to it. I can't wait to listen to the Commitments sing all of these classics.
Also, yeah, but
it's a killer. It's like James. I mean, there are some names.
Yeah, and though they sing a lot of songs that I really love and familiar, but not the versions that I love and familiar with, like "Slip Away" by oh my gosh, by Clarence. I'll come up later, but thank you. It's one of my favorite soul songs. They have the version not by him. They have "Do Right Woman." Fuck up all the song names by Aretha Franklin, sung by someone different, but that's also a really great song. So they have all the classics, but they don't give you the version you expected. Just to throw it off a little bit, I think that's kind of a good move. Probably also cheaper to get some of these music rights. But I feel like they don't hit any of the obvious soul songs as well. Like they're not like singing like "My Girl" or any like Big Temptations hits, and I think that's probably important as well.
Well, they do a good job of they have very well-known people. Like they have Marvin Gaye, but they don't pick the most famous Marvin Gaye song. So they do.
I think I heard it through the grapevine, right?
No, I think "That's the Way Love Is."
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, that's right.
And then, but they don't do 8 No Mountain High, and like they don't do the most famous. Like I think that's good. Is like they do a really good job of making sure you're familiar with the soul music that they're playing, but it's not like, well, you just took the most famous. Like it's not the lazy version of this would be you just took the number one Aretha hit, you took the number one James Brown hit, you took the number one Marvin Gaye hit. That would be, I think, a movie that just doesn't work as well because if they were singing the number one movies, like first off, Jimmy would never let them play just the hits. Like you can tell Jimmy would never let them. He wants to find he's such a music nerd that he would want to find the my favorite Marvin Gaye song is his 9th most famous or something. Like that is, I think Jimmy as a person would be very much in line with the. I need to find like the under the radar hit. That's my favorite.
Yeah, well, I think they're also strategic in picking ones that match the stylings of the singer in the band.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like he had a little more of a James Brown persona to him, so he had to have songs that had that kind of buffer, like not straightforward singing, but a little more like shout singing in a way. Because you meet the singer at a wedding, and he's just like stringing it up like an Irish punk song at this wedding, and he sounds great. And I'm like, I want this guy in an Irish punk band.
Just absolutely really well. Smashed.
Yeah, that wedding scene is also one of my favorites. It's been get introduced to a lot of the band members. As you've seen, Glenn Hansard. We'll talk about Glenn Hansard having some really long red hair, and the bassist as well playing in this like lame as shit wedding band. Once again, like not horrible, but super super lame that they went out of. They're talking to him about like we need to get out of this. Like we do want to make a band with you, Jimmy. They're really the base of the band he's trying to start. And then they see, this guy just smashed and drunk and later does not remember him singing at all at this wedding. Just like shouting, staring at the ground, this kind of Irish punk song. It's a good introduction to, what to expect from these characters moving forward.
And you get to meet Jimmy as he's like trying to sell stuff to people. Like he's very, he's like a very good salesman because he is people see him as a tastemaker. He's the person who brings in the new cassette or the thing that you haven't heard yet, like the thing that is interesting and new, because he's the music guy who always brings in the things before other people do.
I'm really proud of the uniqueness of our podcast that I think we started talking about the last scene and now we're talking about like the first scene of the movie. We have a very logical order in how we run these discussions.
Absolutely. I mean, why not? Um,
Um, but I do think so with the drunkenness of him, and just my favorite like 2 second kind of joke is that Glenn Hansard, when you see him, is playing his guitar with a beer glass instead of his fingers, just sliding it down. There's just a lot of like Irish belligerences where just a lot of beer being thrown around and these drunken characters. There's just as we said, the head smashing. There's this like blood, like it's pretty gory
oh
in a
yeah.
couple parts. Like even when they go to the hospital because the bassist gets electrocuted and they have to go visit him in the hospital. You are introduced to the hospital. This guy just like with his head just like bleeding straight down. And it's just like I think that adds to the kind of rough Irish atmosphere.
It's a rough town. I mean, I think
It's a rough town.
they even are joking about him getting electrocuted as they're like wheeling him out, and like there is very much in like even the headbutter guy Mickey is just like, I'm gonna headbutt somebody and then I'm gonna go play again. Like there's no people just get beat up and like they just keep going, and it is definitely in line with like the whole nature of the film, which is, oh, this is a really kind of working class tough place to live, and the people are tough because of the environment they live in. Zach, this is the movie I think you've been more excited to do than any other. Uh, do you have any final thoughts on the commitments?
Not exactly. I did want to talk about Glenn Hansard a little more. Is that
No.
this is so Glenn Hansard doesn't have a huge role in this part, but we're going to talk about him a lot next week because he's the star of Once and one of my all-time
Well,
favorite
thanks a lot for
musicians.
spoiling the what's
I'm
next
sorry,
week
I'm
section.
telling you who is the actor in the movie we are going to watch. There's only 2 movies he has ever done. So I saw Once a little before I saw The Commitments, and then like so seeing The Commitments after that experience, like 20 years younger Glenn Hansard, with like long red hair, was just like mind blowing to me because I've been a huge fan of him for a long time as a solo singer. He's a singer of the band Frames. I think the Frames were around the early times around this time, so he was already a budding musician. Just I want to encourage everybody to check out Glenn Hansard's music outside of Once. You don't need just this one soundtrack. He has lots of great albums. But it's just fun seeing a musician you love in a random part. Also, another fun fact, because this is the most I've ever researched for a movie too, as far as like quick internet research. Um, the Joey Lips
Okay.
is the only non-musician in the movie because they wanted a original musician, but then they're like, this guy doesn't play trumpet, but he's really capturing the spirit of this douchebag that we want in this role. But who they originally were talking to, but Alan Parker, the director, could not I get along or had a really bad meeting was Van Morrison was supposed to be the original Joey
Wow.
the Lips. Joey, which would have been weird because I don't think he would have sang. He was supposed to be a trumpet player, but they just wanted this like old timey, Irish, figure. He is. I would say Joey the Lips doesn't seem like as much of a prototypical Irish character as they could have put, and Van Morrison would have fit right into that as this, Irish bluesman that they throw into that. That would have been interesting pick. So.
Interesting. This is an interesting movie. Yeah, they switched some characters around as they were filming, and yeah, it's interesting that he was actually a musician, but then plays the non-musician character, and was originally supposed to be the lead singer, which
Would have been weird.
which is bizarre because those characters are. I mean, you would obviously
He can't play this belligerent asshole hating all the girls. He doesn't have that look or that attitude.
no. He like I think they did the right thing.
I think they just have him because he could sing. He does sing the opening credit song though too. So it's like before they changed his role, they kept that
Yeah,
version.
I will. My final thoughts on this film would be one, it's amazing.
It's
People should
amazing.
watch this more. I mean, I'm kind of surprised that this doesn't.
Yeah,
This feels like the perfect movie that would one person would see it and then people would just word of mouth
tell
keep watching
everybody.
it. Especially
It's super
considering movies like
accessible.
well,
Like it's
like
just a
movies.
really fun movie.
Well, people like movies like Sing Street went through the entire film watching audience, and there is kind of some similarities. People like this coming of age music movie, like forming a band thing. Like there's a lot of fandom for that. I will say though, I'm interested to see what your answer is. If you have to start one band and you can either pick Imelda or Natalie to be your lead vocals. Who do you go with?
Natalie, she's a better singer.
Is she though?
She is. Imelda, first of all, made. I'm not convinced they didn't do any work because I know they're not supposed to sound great, but she sounds real bad for like the first half of the movie, like way off pitch, nowhere near it. Near the end, she gets some good notes, to where I'm only convinced she can hit like certain notes. I don't think she can like lead a song.
It's
Natalie
interesting.
is the one, by the way, that has a successful music career after. She's the one that takes off
Is she really?
with Jimmy's help. In the movie,
Oh yeah, in
where
the
they
movie.
go with what they became.
Well, we
They
don't
said
know.
she became very successful, and that's who he ended up managing was her, and falling in love with.
Absolutely. It is that is an interesting thing about uh Imelda, because yes, she does sound kind of off at the beginning. And then there's like a couple songs there where she sounds quite good to the point where you're like, I don't know what
I think they were playing off the idea that she was supposed to be just like, and they give Jimmy her time. Like
she's the
you
hot
just
girl.
brought her in because she's attractive and hot,
Yeah.
and so they're going like, you know what, she's actually talented and gave her a little more to do, and not just hot. So I think they kind of changed the mind on how they wanted to treat that character, kind of halfway through the movie.
Second question, Zach. Do you want to see the sequel to this movie, which follows Natalie and Jimmy and their life?
Are you making this up?
No, I'm saying
It does not exist, right? There's not a sequel. I missed out.
No, I'm asking if you wanted to see the sequel. Like, if you could go back to 1981 and convince Alan Parker to make the sequel,
A
how much do
commitment
you want them?
reunion for 20 years later, when Glenn Hansard is actually just Glenn Hansard.
I want the sequel though. I want the Jimmy sequel.
I will
I want
say
more
that
of this character.
I'm going to Google this before I tell you some misinformation. But it is based on a trilogy of books by Roddy Doyle, which I've been wanting to read for a while. I might get this on um, audiobooks because I accidentally bought like $200 worth of Audible audiobooks on accident. So I have this all ready to go. So there's a trilogy. It's called the Berrytown trilogy. It starts with the Commitments. There's the Snapper and the Van. They're all about his family. So I don't know if it's just Jimmy, but it's about Jimmy's family. So there's sequel material. It's not all music based, but you at least get into the Rabbits. Great last name, the Rabbits.
Well, actually, in fun fact, there was movies based on the two next books, both directed by Stephen Frears.
What movies are there? Are they called what the
They're
books are
called
called?
exactly the same thing.
Never heard of them. Okay, I want to watch those.
One of them is a television movie. The
Oh.
Snapper is a television movie with Cole Meany and Brendan Gleeson, and then the Van
So
has.
Cole Meany's playing the same character.
I
He's doing
All right, we're doing. This is called research on the fly.
it. Well, because I should have probably told you this was a book series before we started. This is my fault.
No, Cole Meany is playing a character named Des Curley in the next movie.
That's weird.
And was nominated for a Golden Globe. Interesting.
Yeah, Jimmy Rabbit Sr. is the Van, which I assume is his dad. That's in the Van. I'm looking at the book. This is great podcasting. There's a character's name is Bimbo. Brendan Bimbo Reeves.
It's a great name.
Oh, that is the one with Cole. No, he is playing the same character. They changed his name to Larry in the Van, but renamed Jimmy Rabbit.
Do they?
Yeah. So he changed his name, but it's playing that character, which is weird. That's in the Van.
That is very interesting. All right, we're gonna have to.
Hey, next month we're gonna do
Cole Meany month coming up.
Cole Meany month.
But yes, this movie.
So there is sequels, is what I'm saying.
Well, unfortunately, they do not feature Robert Arkins, who I want in more movies. Stop doing music. Go back in time. Get a time machine. Stop doing music. Do movies. I want to see more of you.
I don't think he would have been much more than the 90s. I think he fit a certain kind of 90s. He's like the Irish. Oh my gosh, this is really of us just like talking to each other at this point, like we do always. Who is? He's a dad in 8th grade, and he is in Kicking and Screaming. I'm thinking.
Oh, Josh Hamilton.
Thank you. I feel like he is the Irish version of Josh Hamilton time, because if you watch Kicking and Screaming, which I don't believe you've seen, you have the same. Okay, well, I feel like you have the same thought. Is there like Josh Hamilton? Like, why couldn't he be like a major star? He kind of fades away because he just fits that kind of Generation X 90s thing. I think Jimmy is very similar. He is very Irish Generation X.
I will give you another comparison. I think Robert Arkins is Jamie Bell before we got Jamie Bell.
I feel like this is coming off of you just watching or listening to a Blank Check episode starring
I,
Jamie
I
Bell
did
and
I
then
did
thinking
not
about.
listen to that. I did not listen to that.
You mean
All
Jamie Bell, the star of one of the classic working class UK movies, Billy Elliot,
I'm just
one of the
saying.
best of the genre.
I'm saying that in some ways it's not even that one. It's uh the film stars Don't Die in Liverpool one with Annette Bening. That character reminds me of this one.
You're the only person that's seen that movie, so that's a take for you.
All right, let us continue on to our second section. We've decided for this month that our second section, where we typically talk about the career of somebody, we want to talk about the music in this movie. We want to talk about, take the movie away for a second. We want to talk about the commitments as a band and evaluate them if they were just a band. So, Zach, you're definitely more of the music guy than I am. Why don't you talk a little bit about the influence? They talk about their own influence in the movie, the influence that they have. Why don't you share some of that, and then why don't you tell me what you think about them as a band?
So it does help when you set their ambitions low. Like they're not meant to be, superstar band. However, and they are essentially a cover band, which in the 60s making soul cover music, which is like the go-to, like there's basically 20 songs, and every soul musician, Aretha Franklin, Smokey Robinson, they all sing the same songs. You listen to the albums, it's the same songs recycled over and over again, a lot of the same ones. And even the Beatles did that in their early albums, was the same soul songs. So this kind of band singing these soul classics would have fit perfectly in the 60s. In the 80s, this was really going back to something new. It was novel at the time because it was more about new wave at the moment. But so as far as being a soul cover band in the 80s, you're not going to amount to much. You set your limits there. They could be famous as a live band, within their community or even within the country, but not as much of a recording artist. But I think the sound, if I saw them as live band, like this is fucking great. The lead actor, not lead actor, what am I talking about? The lead singer, sorry, is really doing like a Joe Cocker thing in voice and in appearance. I don't know what your experience with Joe Cocker is.
Not much.
Well, he's a great singer. I feel like his most famous song is "Get By with a Little Help We're Friends," so a Beatles cover. It is this theme song of Wonder Years was his version, and it's a better version of it. But Joe Cocker, who also had a very famous impression by John Belushi on SNL, which was always weird to me because it was just John Belushi. You're forgetting that he's actually doing a joke. The joke is he just seems so much like Joe Cocker. It sounds like the lead singer in this, but there's just some like weird face movements, and the body is like so into it. And every now and then you can see the actor kind of taking in this really Joe Cocker thing. I think there's a lot of inspiration by that. That's where I think the more modern touch was going. It was really connecting the old soul music to Joe Cocker was still really big in the 80s. Kind of style of singing. So I think that's maybe where that music would have existed. Or if you want to imagine what his career would be like, you are led to believe that he had a successful singing career after this. I think that's what you would go for. It's kind of a Joe Cocker, maybe a little bit of a Van Morrison with that less like creative ability. Like Van Morrison wrote his own songs. This guy, you cannot believe, actually knew how to make music. He was just a singer, which is definitely Joe Cocker. So, anyways, it's still like if I saw him at a bar, like I'd be all about it. There's nothing better than seeing like soul music or blues music at a bar.
Absolutely. This is actually, you know what? I'm going to tell a story right now. When I was in undergraduate school, I took chemistry 1 with this gentleman named Thomas Whalen, who was a Irish gentleman in the chemistry department, who told us this story one time. This is a fascinating. It's one of the professor stories are never good. They're almost never good. This is the one good professor story I've ever heard. When Tom was in his own undergraduate career at the University of Cork, he went. There would be like a Friday night band at like the student union, and the band would play at a time, blah blah blah, and everyone would pitch in and pay for it. One Friday night, they were there, and the band was like 45 minutes late. They show up, they're absolutely pissed, destroyed, get up on stage and start playing. And he said that you could instantly tell that this band was so much better than any other band had ever been there. That band was U2. So there's
Are
your
you
little.
relating the commitments to U2, or are you just telling a
No,
side
I'm just
story?
relating this random story about my professor told us
Okay.
about seeing U2 at a random student union when he was a university student. But yeah, I thought I'd tell that story because when else am I ever going to tell that story in this podcast?
This is all to our favorite band stories. Do you know I've seen Sugar Ray in concert 5 times?
Bands. This is going to be a very short section of band stories because I cannot
This
match
is
your
so
band
great.
stories.
I have a great story about the rap group Nat Roots that we are going to try to fit in at some point. I had a great interaction with them. It's my if you ever do meeting celebrity moments, that's where we'll go.
I think what we're going
It,
to do is we'll do our rap section on the Christmas themed episode of this month.
um, it is important to note that they did tour in like well into the 2000s. We're still touring as commitments.
Oh
I don't
yeah,
know what members were there, but so they did build off this music like people. They are a successful band, following that. And it is important that they got all successful musicians. Like a lot of these people had very successful music careers, and that adds to the realisticness of the music, and the realisticness of the performance. Like if you're a performer, you're going to act out those scenes, better, I think, than normal people. So that
yeah,
that helps the quality of the music as well. I think
yes.
all the music in the movies we're going to talk about is good. I mean, School of
Oh,
Rock, we can debate spoilers of what episodes are doing, but
Zack is just dropping all them. No, but I think that's one of the reasons this movie works so well is that it is just a bunch of musicians, and we keep talking about. I've mentioned Sing Street a couple times, but the comparison that Sing Street has to this is that was also a bunch of musicians. Like most of those people had more experience as musicians than they did as actors, and I think that's one of the things that works so well. Like this is the problem. This is the mistake that Hollywood makes all the time: is they make a movie with singing in it, and they cast people who can't sing because they're famous, rather than what the Commitments does, which is like, hey, let's make sure these people can sing and play musical instruments before we build in their band. I think, I'll be honest, I do not have any great music takes like you do, but I will say that I think the entire soundtrack is awesome. I think every song they do is
yeah.
great. I want to listen to more of it. Um,
You should
and
also
yeah,
listen to the originals and let it inspire you to delve deeper into soul as a genre, and not just listen to the Irish white version of it.
I actually I am relatively well versed in the people they are covering on this.
Okay. I could also recommend to you if you're really trying to get into 60s soul music, there's this great thing on Spotify called Zack Ford's Top 100 Songs of each year from 1960 to 1969. There's a lot of great recommendations on it.
Zack, would you like me to put those in the comments?
Yeah, I mean, 01. Thanks. We talked about me being a crazy person. I definitely do create a top 100 song list every year. I'm only at 1969 right now, but I will get from 1950s to 2020.
It takes him so much time because he legitimately has to listen to so much music to get a sample size large enough to create a top 100.
I remember I'm a dad, and I don't know how. When do I have time to be a father?
That's a good question.
Yeah, music
I mean,
takes for fun.
yeah, basically.
No,
Um,
stop! Don't say basically. You're supposed to go against me saying I'm a bad dad. I go, Zach, you're a great dad. Everyone loves you. Everyone in the world loves you.
all right, we don't need to pat ourselves on the back anymore. We don't need to stand in a circle and pat ourselves on the back. Um, Zack, any final thoughts, any wrap up thoughts on the music of the Commitments?
I don't, but I do want to propose an idea that at the end of this month we rank our bands. We rank the 5 bands that we see as best bands.
Absolutely. We will rank our final bands on the bonus episode for December. We will rank
Yeah.
all of the bands on that month. And I'm going to be honest, I've not seen every movie we've done yet. I have to watch some of them. The Commitments is a strong start. This is a strong band choice.
The kids in School of Rock aren't going to be better.
Are you saying, I mean, School of Rock you just like because School of Rock is what you wish you could be as a teacher?
I am as a teacher.
Yeah, but doesn't he get fired? You basically
At some
just
point,
told.
the principal's going to walk into the room, and I'm like on the ground pretending I'm dead, which I do like every other day in some of my classes where they ask dumb questions and I pretend to die.
I've done this too. With that, I think we have talked about the Commitments. We've talked the Commitments. Please go watch this movie. I beg you, So few people have seen it. It is so good. Thank you to Zack for pushing us out for this. This was an absolute joy to watch. It is so good, especially if you like John Carney's movies and like the recent.
Ireland.
Yeah, if you like Irish, if you like Irish music or you like Irish movies, please watch this movie. Listen to the soundtrack. I know I am. It's on Spotify. You can listen to the soundtrack. You listen to Zack Fort's playlists. No one will do that, but they will listen to the soundtrack. Zach looks mad at me. That's fine. With that, let me announce that next week, as Zach has already spoiled, we will be covering Once, which is, I believe, another Irish movie, if I'm not wrong. Just wanted to make sure John Carney hadn't switched countries for his movie. We'll be back with that next week. Thank you, Zach, for forcing me to watch The Commitments, which was an absolute joy.
And I can't wait for you to say this next week for forcing you to watch Once finally.
Yeah. Yes, but you had to argue.
Different vibe.
You had to argue a lot harder for The Commitments because I'd never heard of it when it came up.
Yes. Yeah, that's why we're so shocked in telling people, because we look at Letterboxd and we have a thriving film community of friends, and literally no one has seen it except for Brian Michaels, I think.
I believe it's like you and me are like 5 stars, and there might be like one other person who thought it was okay.
And then critics that I have friends with, but no one that we know as real people they have watched it recently.
Yes, but please go watch The Commitments. It's fantastic. And join us next week as we explore the band that is formed in the film Once. We hope you have an awesome time. Go listen to The Commitments. We will see you next week.